Okay, so just this week, something pretty significant happened with the Epstein case.
That's right. The Justice Department released a whole load of interviews with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, Epstein's convicted associate, and what she said was, well, kind of striking.
Definitely. She flat out denied there was ever a client list.
Right, denied the list, and she even said she doesn't believe Epstein died by suicide.
Though without giving, an alternative explanation.
And this lands right after the DOJ and FBI finished their own big inquiry.
Yeah, and their conclusion was basically the same on the list. They said it doesn't exist.
And they also found no new illegal activity by any other parties.
Which is where things get really interesting, isn't it?
Because that official stance just completely clashes with years, literal years of promises.
Promises from some very prominent people, many who are now in, positions of significant power.
People who swore they were going to expose this big, incriminating list.
Exactly. So the public, particularly conservatives, who were hearing these promises loud and clear, they expected, bombshells.
And instead, what landed felt, well, like a bit of a flop, honestly.
It raises that big question, doesn't it? What happens when these promises of total transparency just slam into official denials?
Yeah, and you're left with all these unanswered questions and just this swirling public distrust.
It's a real clash.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this whole thing. We're diving deep today into this Epstein files controversy.
We've got a lot to draw on: articles, the Maxwell interviews themselves, congressional updates.
Right, detailing this intense backlash, especially aimed at the DOJ and the FBI.
So our mission, really, is to untangle this. The promised revelations versus what the officials actually concluded.
And we need to look closely at what Ghislaine Maxwell actually said in these new interviews.
And also explore the political side, the legal hurdles, all the stuff that's shaping how people see this case.
Because this whole situation, it really highlights a critical challenge, doesn't it?
It does. When the official story just doesn't line up with what people were promised for so long.
It doesn't just erode trust.
No, it makes you question, who do you even believe?
Yeah.
Which sources are reliable?
So we're going to look at not just what was said or what was found or not found.
But why? Why this gap, this discrepancy, has hit such a nerve, especially with folks who felt they were given a direct promise of full disclosure.
Okay, so we have this stark contrast, the official word. No client list, Epstein's death was suicide. That's the conclusion.
Right. But for a lot of people, that's just, it's incredibly hard to swallow.
So what created this huge disconnect between the official findings and what the public, especially certain segments, expected?
Well, that's the real tension here, isn't it? It goes back to those promises.
Made over years.
Exactly. For years, you had powerful voices, people now in positions of real authority, making very explicit claims about what these files contained.
So when the official findings came out, and they were pretty definitive based on a lot of data.
A huge amount. 300 gigabytes, according to the DOJ FBI memo from July 21st, 2025.
Right. So when that memo came out saying no new illegal activity by third parties and, crucially, no client list.
And reaffirming the 2019 death was suicide.
It wasn't just a factual update for many people. It felt like a betrayal.
Betrayal of trust, yeah. Especially for those who heard those promises and believed them. It really set the stage for this intense backlash, particularly, as you noted, from the right.
And these promises, they weren't vague hints. They were pretty specific sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer volume, the specificity. It really highlights how political rhetoric can just inflate expectations sky high.
Setting an almost impossible bar.
Leading inevitably to disappointment. And then this deep questioning of, the institutions themselves when the official word is so different.
You mentioned the credibility of the people making the promises. That must play a huge role too, right? Especially those now in government.
It's definitely a combination, the volume and the source. You had several high-profile figures, many now in power, really driving this narrative.
Like Kash Patel, now FBI director.
Exactly. Before he was even appointed back in December 2023, he was publicly calling for House Republicans to release Epstein's list of pedophiles.
He even threw in that bit about Bill Gates lobbying against it, right?
Yeah, and he told Glenn Beck the FBI director had direct control of Epstein's Black Book, urging Trump to roll out the Black Book on day one.
And then during his confirmation hearing, January 2025, he actually promised to publish Epstein files.
He did. And he wasn't the only one making these kinds of statements.
Pam Bondi, the Attorney General now.
Right. She had that famous line on Fox News, February 2024, saying an Epstein list was sitting on my desk right now to review.
She did walk that back later, saying she meant the whole case file.
But that initial statement, wow, It created a very specific picture in people's minds.
And then she claimed the FBI in New York was withholding documents in March 2025, said a truckload of evidence arrived after she asked.
Which turned out to be false, but again, it fueled that narrative of obstruction or hidden truths.
And Dan Bongino, now FBI Deputy Director,
On his podcast, September 2024, predicting the list would rock the Democrat Party, saying there's a reason they're hiding it. He also questioned the suicide ruling.
Then you have President Trump himself, during the campaign, saying he'd declassify the Epstein files.
Yeah. Though, interestingly, after the DOJ announcement in July 2025, his tone shifted. He called Epstein a creep and the whole thing a Democratic hoax.
And let's not forget Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene insisting on a 97-page book with names.
And Senator Marsha Blackburn making it a top priority, saying the list was key to cracking the trafficking ring. She even got that promise from Patel at his hearing.
So yeah, these weren't just whispers. These were loud public statements from people now in very senior positions, setting that bar extremely high.
Exactly. Which makes the official findings and Maxwell's recent statements even more jarring for those who were expecting something completely different.
Okay, so these unfulfilled promises created one layer of tension. And then, boom, this week, Ghislaine Maxwell's own words are released.
Right, August 22nd. Hours of audio. Hundreds of pages of transcripts, interviews conducted by Deputy AG Todd Blanche.
And again, like the DOJ FBI report, she explicitly denies any client list or blackmail material.
Flat out denies it, and adds her own belief that Epstein didn't die by suicide.
Which just raises the question, why would she deny the list? She's convicted, yes, but she had limited immunity for these interviews.
Meaning she couldn't be prosecuted for what she said unless she lied, committed perjury. So it's a calculated statement.
Did she offer any reason why she thinks the list idea exists?
She floated a theory. She suggested it started back in 2009 when some lawyer told the FBI they had a piece of evidence from Epstein.
Implying Epstein then maybe became an informant.
That was her suggestion, yeah. Which again runs completely counter to the public narrative, especially among those anticipating this grand reveal of powerful names.
And they really pushed her on names, didn't they? Prominent people.
They did. And her line was consistent. Never ever saw any man doing something inappropriate with a woman of any age. Just blanket denial.
What about Donald Trump specifically?
She said absolutely never in any context. Called him cordial, kind, a gentleman, denied seeing him in any massage setting or inappropriate setting.
And Bill Clinton. She traveled with him.
She recalled a trip to Latin America, called it an honor and a privilege, but claimed she didn't remember the purpose.
Interesting. And she framed the Clintons as her friends, not Epstein's.
That's what she said, yeah. Trying to distance Epstein from them, perhaps.
And the famous photo, Prince Andrew, Virginia Giuffre, Maxwell herself.
She called it literally a fake photo and denied even introducing Epstein to Andrew.
Wow. So just across the board denials regarding these high-profile figures.
It's a consistent pattern. It directly challenges narratives that have been circulating for, well, years.
This pattern of denial from such a central figure, plus, some journalist expressing skepticism, it makes you wonder.
It does. It forces you to ask how much of the client list story was maybe fueled by speculation, not hard evidence. It really complicates things for people seeking clear answers.
She also mentioned Epstein having a separate life, didn't she? And his personality changing.
Yeah, she linked it to him starting testosterone in the late 90s, saying his character altered, trying to paint a picture of change over time, maybe.
And her lawyer is still saying she's innocent, a scapegoat.
David Marcus, yeah.
Yeah.
He maintains that position. So you have her perspective, convicted but denying specifics, adding another layer, muddying the waters.
It's also worth remembering Julie Brown's take, right? The Miami Herald reporter who broke so much of this.
Absolutely. She's been skeptical about a specific client list for a while, called the idea dubious, even suggested it was maybe cooked up to monetize podcasts.
Which is a pretty cynical take, but adds another perspective when you're trying to weigh the evidence or lack thereof.
It really highlights how the intense public demand for answers can sometimes, create space for narratives that aren't fully grounded.
Okay, so with all these denials from the DOJ, FBI, Maxwell herself, why doesn't this just end? Why is the case still so alive in the public mind?
Well, a huge part of it is legal roadblocks. Actual, concrete legal barriers.
Like the court seals.
Exactly. The DOJ FBI memo even said that much of the material is under court-ordered seals. They legally cannot release it.
So even if someone wanted full transparency, their hands might be tied.
Precisely. And we saw this play out in court recently.
The grand jury transcripts.
Yeah. Back in July 2025, a Florida federal judge, Robin Rosenberg, specifically denied the Trump administration's request to unseal Epstein's 2005 and 2007 grand jury records.
And what was her reasoning?
She said the law in her circuit, the 11th Circuit, simply tied her hands. It does not permit unsealing those records based on the government's request.
So established legal precedent is preventing disclosure.
Right. And another judge, Paul Engelmayer, also denied Ghislaine Maxwell access to those same transcripts. It shows how strong these legal protections are.
So with those legal walls up, what hope is there for more transparency? Where do things stand now?
Well, Congress is still pushing. The House Oversight Committee under Republican Chair James Comer isn't letting it go.
They issued a subpoena, didn't they?
Yes, on August 5th, 2025, they subpoenaed the DOJ for Epstein-related documents.
And the administration is complying.
It seems so. The reporting says the Trump administration actually started turning over documents on Friday, August 22nd.
The same day the Maxwell transcripts came out. Interesting timing.
And Comer has pledged transparency, saying the records will be made public.
But with redactions, right, to protect victims and sensitive material.
That's the crucial caveat. Redactions to protect victims' identities and any child sexual abuse material. So while it shows continued interest, especially from conservatives wanting answers.
And it shows that check and balance, Congress pushing the executive branch.
Definitely demonstrates that separation of powers. But those necessary redactions mean the complete, unvarnished story, especially about powerful people, might still remain hidden.
Which brings us to the blame game, I guess. This whole situation, the gap between promises and reality, it sparked a lot of debate, especially among conservatives.
It really has. About who's actually responsible for the lack of, the full story coming out.
And you see this both sides narrative popping up.
Yeah. Some conservatives are pushing that idea, arguing that, well, maybe Democrats and Republicans are both implicated, or maybe they're all covering for each other.
Suggesting it's not really about politicians, but maybe protecting powerful business figures, the rich.
That's the argument some make,
Yeah.
that politicians are just cover for deeper interests. It often stems from a pretty deep distrust of the entire establishment.
What do critics of that both sides argument say?
Well, they might suggest it's a way to deflect blame, perhaps away from the current Republican leaders who are the ones making those very public promises about releasing files.
They point to the timeline, right? Epstein arrested and died in 2019 under Trump.
Right. And no one else was prosecuted by Trump's DOJ related to Epstein's crimes back then.
Whereas Maxwell was prosecuted later under the Biden administration.
Correct. Those are facts people bring up to argue it's maybe more complex than just saying both sides are equally responsible.
And then there's the actual politics playing out in Congress right now. That adds another layer.
It does. There was a report, for instance, that House Republicans recently voted against a measure to release the files while Democrats voted for it.
Which seems counterintuitive given the earlier rhetoric.
It does. And you had Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett saying, look, this Epstein case just wasn't the same kind of front and center priority for Democrats as it seemed to be for the GOP during their campaigns.
So the whole issue just becomes this political football.
Absolutely. Accusations fly back and forth. Hypocrisy claims.
Like Democrats only pushing for release now that Republicans are in power, knowing maybe it won't pass. Or Republicans blocking release despite demanding it earlier.
Exactly. You hear arguments that Democrats had chances under Biden and didn't push as hard, and now Republicans are blocking it despite campaigning on it.
And meanwhile, the actual information gets caught in the crossfire.
Making it harder for the public, for you listening who just wants clear answers and accountability, to actually get them. It gets lost in the partisan noise.
So at the end of the day, this deep dive into the Epstein files, it's about more than just this one case, isn't it?
I think so. It really shows this tangled web where public hopes, fueled by political promises, crashed into legal realities and official narratives.
We've seen some movement, like the documents going to the House committee now.
But the full picture, it still feels pretty elusive.
Yeah, and these ongoing efforts, like Comer's committee pushing, they suggest the story isn't over.
Not by a long shot. Which really leaves a big question for you, the listener, doesn't it?
How do we, as citizens, figure out what's true? How do we hold power accountable when the information is so filtered?
Filtered through political agendas, legal walls, even the carefully crafted stories of people directly involved, like Maxwell.
And maybe how much do our own expectations, shaped by all that noise, influence what we're willing to believe or accept as the truth?